If you are insecure, guess what? The rest of the world is too. Do not overestimate the competition and underestimate yourself. You are better than you think. Powerful stuff, huh? Welcome to By the Pages, the show where we crack open fascinating books and pull out the juiciest ideas. Today, we're diving deep into The 4-Hour Workweek by Timothy Ferriss.
Oh yeah, this book really shook things up when it first came out.
It definitely made people rethink, well, everything. Work, money, life. So tell me, why did this book resonate so much with readers when it was published?
I think a lot of people felt stuck, like the traditional path of work, then retire just didn't appeal to them anymore.
So this idea of the new rich, or R as Timothy calls them, is about something more than just, piles of money, right?
Absolutely. It's about designing a life you actually enjoy right now, not waiting for some far-off retirement.
Okay, so contrast that with the defers, the Ds.
Yeah.
What's the fundamental difference in mindset there?
The do's, they're all about delaying gratification. Work hard now, hopefully enjoy life later. But Timothy argues, what if you could have both? What if you could enjoy life now and build a fulfilling career?
So is this book just for, entrepreneurs and digital nomads? Or can anyone apply these principles?
Anyone, really. It's about having options. Imagine an employee who loves to ski. They negotiate a remote work setup so they can hit the slopes all winter. Or a musician who tours half the year and runs an online business the other half. It's about tailoring your life to your passions.
Okay, I love that. Now, one thing that always jumps out is the title itself, The 4-Hour Workweek. Come on, is that even possible?
Well, it's a catchy title for sure.
That's for sure.
And it definitely grabs your attention. But Timothy clarifies, it's not about literally only working 4 hours. It's more about focusing your energy on the most important things. Working smarter, not harder. Right?
Okay, so efficiency is key here. Got it. Another thing Timothy tackles is this idea that income equals hours worked. The more you grind, the more you earn.
Yeah, that's a myth he debunks pretty effectively. He uses real-life examples, like Doug, who created a business called ProSoundEffects.com.
What's so special about Doug's story?
Well, he found a niche market, built a system that basically ran itself. Now he earns a great living, but he's not chained to his desk. He can travel, pursue other interests.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
But I think for a lot of people, fear is a huge barrier. Like, what if I quit my job and it all goes wrong?
Oh, absolutely. Fear is a big one. But Timothy has a tool for that. Fear setting.
Okay, I've heard of this. It's not about ignoring fear.
No, it's about facing it head on. You identify your worst fears, analyze what would happen if they came true, and then come up with plans to mitigate those risks. You take away fear's power.
I love that. He tells a great story about Hans, the lawyer who quit his job to start a surf company in Brazil, right?
Exactly. Hans used fear setting to overcome those doubts and build a life he truly loved.
So inspiring. Now, another key concept is this idea of redefining productivity. We're so conditioned to think long hours equal success.
Right, and Timothy challenges that. He argues it's not about how much time you work, it's about what you accomplish in that time.
So, quality over quantity. Makes sense.
He brings up Parkinson's law, which states that work expands to fill the time allotted. Give yourself a week for a task, it'll take a month. Give yourself a day, and guess what?
It gets done in a day.
Exactly. Shorten your work time, you're forced to prioritize and focus. He talks about Sharni, who got more done in 18 hours a week than he did in 40.
Wow. Okay, I need to learn that trick.
Yeah.
So it's not about working less. It's about working on the right things.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the art of elimination.
Yes.
This is where we apply the 80-20 principle, right? Focus on the 20% that gives you 80% of the results.
Absolutely. Identify those time wasters and cut them out. Streamline your email, avoid pointless meetings, get rid of anything that's not moving you towards your goals.
I need to take notes on that one. Okay, let's talk Muse. This is one of my favorite concepts in the book.
Ah, yes, the dream. A business that makes money without you constantly working on it.
So how do we make this a reality?
Find a niche. Create a product or service that solves a problem and automate as much as possible. Like Doug with his sound effects business.
Right, but that sounds pretty specific. Are there other examples? Maybe something more relatable?
Sure, Sherwood, he sold French sailor shirts online. Targeted a specific market, kept it simple. Or Johanna, she created a yoga program for athletes and sold it digitally. The point is, it doesn't have to be super complicated.
Start small, test your idea, and scale up from there.
Exactly. Experimentation is key.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground already. The new rich, fear setting, productivity hacks, muses. It's a lot to process. But I think the biggest takeaway so far is this. We have more control over our lives than we think.
Absolutely. And the 4-hour work week gives us the tools to take back that control.
One of the things I really appreciate about Timothy is he doesn't just throw out these big ideas and leave you hanging.
Right. He actually gives you practical steps you can take, which I think is so important. Absolutely. It's not just theory. It's like, okay, here's how you actually do this. And one of the first things he talks about is really being intentional about the information you consume.
Yeah, he's big on cutting through the noise.
Because there's so much of it.
So much.
He even suggests, maybe skip the news altogether.
Whoa, that's a big one.
It is a big one, but think about it. How much of the news you consume actually leads to you taking action?
Good point.
A lot of it is just noise. It just stresses you out. Instead, focus on sources that are directly relevant to your goals, your interests.
So be picky about what you let into your headspace.
Exactly. And that goes for other areas of your life, too. Email, social media.
Oh, yeah. Those can be huge time sucks.
Big time. And Timothy has tons of tips for streamlining all of that. Set up autoresponders, check email in batches, maybe even hire a virtual assistant to handle the routine stuff.
Free up your mental energy for the important things.
Exactly. And speaking of important things, let's circle back to that Muse concept.
Okay, the business that runs itself. But how do we actually make that happen?
Well, there are a few key elements. You've got to find the right niche, something people actually want and need. Then you need to develop a product or service that fills that need. And of course, you've got to automate.
Make the business work for you, not the other way around.
Exactly. We talked about Doug and the sound effects, but maybe that's not everyone's cup of tea.
Right. So what are some other examples? Maybe something a little more, I don't know, every day.
Well, there's Sherwood. He started selling those French sailor shirts online.
Okay, interesting.
Super simple product, but he targeted the right market, and he used online tools to test and validate his idea before going all in.
Smart.
And then there's Johanna. She created a yoga program specifically for athletes and sold it online.
So you don't need some groundbreaking invention.
Nope. It's about finding a niche, solving a problem, and keeping it relatively simple.
Got it. But once you have the product, how do you build the business so it can actually run without you?
That's where Timothy's roadmap comes in. He walks you through outsourcing, automating, creating systems that don't require your constant attention.
So you can actually enjoy that freedom and mobility. Okay, let's talk about escaping the office. For those of us stuck in a traditional job, how do we make that happen?
Well, it starts with a conversation. You've got to get your boss on board with remote work, flexible schedules.
Easier said than done, right?
It can be tricky, but Timothy gives you a step-by-step plan for making your case.
Okay, so it's not just about saying, hey, I want to work from home.
No, you've got to frame it in a way that benefits your employer. Talk about increased productivity, cost savings, happier employees.
So make it a win-win.
Exactly. And start small. Maybe suggest a trial period, focus on your most productive days, gradually increase the time you work remotely.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's fast forward a bit. You've got the remote work situation figured out. Your Muse is bringing in income. What's next?
Mini retirements.
Ah, yes, those extended periods of travel and exploration. Sounds amazing, but expensive.
That's the common misconception. Timothy shows you how to travel the world on a budget.
He's got all those travel hacking secrets.
Oh, yeah. Finding cheap flights, affordable accommodation, and, living expenses often go down when you're traveling, especially if you're spending time in countries with a lower cost of living.
He talks about living comfortably in Thailand, Argentina, all on a pretty modest budget.
Exactly. So it's more attainable than you might think.
But I think a lot of people worry about leaving their life behind, even for a few months. What about responsibilities back home?
Right. And Timothy addresses that. He talks about renting out your apartment, automating your bills, staying connected while you're abroad. You can even bring your family along.
Okay, so with some planning, it's doable. But are there any common mistakes people make when trying to live this 4-hour workweek life?
Oh, for sure. One big one is fear.
Fear of what?
Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of the unknown.
Fear of missing out.
Yeah, all of that. But Timothy's message is embrace the discomfort, view failure as a learning opportunity. And remember, you don't have to do everything exactly like he did.
It's about adapting the principles to your own life.
Exactly. Another mistake is overcomplicating things. Timothy is all about simplicity, efficiency.
Streamline, delegate, automate.
Yes. Focus on the essentials, cut out the rest. That goes for both work and life.
So you've escaped the 9 to 5, you're traveling the world, your Muse is humming along. How do you avoid that feeling of, I don't know, emptiness?
That's a great question. And that's where the last part of the book comes in. Timothy talks about finding new challenges, meaningful pursuits outside of work.
So it's not just about escaping the rat race, it's about finding something that truly fulfills you.
Exactly. Explore your passions, learn new skills, engage in activities that bring you joy.
He talks about learning languages, martial arts, experimenting with different lifestyles.
It's about continuing to grow even after you've achieved that time freedom.
You know, it's one thing to read about these amazing lifestyle changes, but how do we actually make it happen?
Well, Timothy stresses that there's no magic formula. It's about experimentation.
Right, finding what works for you.
Exactly. He does highlight some common pitfalls to watch out for, though.
Like what?
Well, sometimes people get caught up in the income part and forget about the lifestyle design. Like, they're so focused on making money, they don't actually define what they want their life to look like.
Ah, so you need a clear vision first.
Definitely. And sometimes people get bogged down in the details, like the nuts and bolts of starting a business, before they even know if there's a market for their idea.
You got to test the waters first.
Exactly. And then there's the trap of just staying busy. You finally have all this free time, but you fill it up with stuff that doesn't really matter.
Ah, busy work.
Yeah, it's important to be intentional with your time, whether you're working or not. Make sure you're doing things that align with your goals, your values.
It's all about being mindful. I think one of the biggest takeaways for me from this book is the importance of questioning assumptions.
Absolutely. Timothy really encourages us to challenge those deeply held beliefs about work, productivity, success, all those things we've been taught.
Like we have to work long hours to get ahead.
Or that happiness is something you achieve later in life after you've put in your dues.
He says, why wait? Design a life you enjoy right now.
Exactly. And part of that is defining what success actually means to you. It's not about keeping up with the Joneses or meeting some arbitrary societal standard.
Right, it's personal. So how do we actually go about creating that dream life?
Well, Timothy talks about dreamlines, actually writing down your goals, the experiences you want to have, both in the short term and the long term. It's about having a roadmap.
Okay, so a vision board, but more actionable.
Exactly. And then it's about taking steps, even small ones, to move towards those goals. The 4-Hour Workweek is full of these inspiring stories, practical tips. It really empowers you to take control. Now, let's say more and more people start adopting these principles. How do you think that could impact society as a whole?
That's an interesting thought.
Yeah, imagine if people had more time to pursue their passions, to contribute to their communities. It could lead to a surge in creativity, entrepreneurship, maybe even a more balanced, less stressed out society.
I love that.
Yeah.
But it could also be disruptive, right? Like what happens to traditional employment if everyone's working less?
True, it would require some adjustments, maybe even a rethinking of how we structure work and provide for people's basic needs, but I think it's a conversation worth having.
It definitely is. Well, as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one key takeaway you hope our listeners walk away with?
I hope they remember that they have the power to design their own lives. You don't have to settle for the status quo. You can create a life that's truly fulfilling on your own terms, and the 4-Hour Workweek gives you the tools to do it.
It's a powerful message. It's a challenge to step outside your comfort zone, experiment, and create a life you truly love. So listeners, we leave you with this question. What would your ideal week look like if you could design it from scratch? Think about it. Dream big. And don't be afraid to take action. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the 4-Hour Workweek. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring.
It's been a pleasure exploring this book with you.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to By the Pages for more deep dives into books that can change your life. And be sure to check the episode description for a link to the 4-Hour Workweek.